Hey guys, welcome back to the WODdoc Project 365, episode 784. I'm here with Duke Van Vleet. Did I say it right?
Van Vleet.
Van Vleet. Shit, I had it better last time. We screwed up. The camera died. I had to redo it. Van Vleet with a V. Van Vleet.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
He's the owner here at CrossFit Rising Wave, and he's been so nice to allow me to work out here a couple days. We were doing some stuff, and he's elite gymnast, right? On Cirque du Soleil. Tell us a little bit more about that. Also, he also does a lot of gymnastic stuff associated with LA Reign, with Power Monkey Fitness, a bunch of great stuff. So elaborate on what I might have missed. First of all, thank you. I didn't even shake your hand, my man.
My pleasure. So you know, I was a competitive gymnast for pretty much all my life. I went through the NCAA program, went on to work for Cirque du Soleil for about 9 years, and got into CrossFit.
Which is super cool. You got to check out these alternating giants that he does. I was watching.
So yeah, once upon a time doing some crazy stuff. But yeah, you know, I couldn't do that forever, and found CrossFit while I was on tour. And you know, just recently got into the business of CrossFit. Became the new owner here about 3 months ago. So constantly building. But I'm super lucky, man. I've been exposed to a lot of great coaches and athletes, working with the guys at Power Monkey, you know, Dave Durrani and his crew. As well as, you know, some of the athletes I'm fortunate enough to work with and help with their progress towards, you know, getting to the games or regionals or whatever that may be. So again, very blessed to be able to you know, support my family with a sport that we didn't really have a future in, you know, decades ago, and now people seek me out for my help for gymnastics. So I'm very blessed and honored to do that.
And that's awesome. So I mean, like, this guy is coaching some of the top of the top level elite athletes. So if what he says, if they're listening to it, I think that you guys should listen to it as well. A lot of the things, or one of the many questions I ask people when I first come in and I'm trying to start a conversation and we're trying to think of topics, brainstorm topics, I always like to say, what's something that you see commonly done wrong or is a misconception, and then how do you fix it? And the first thing that we talked about when it started was the misconnect, or between the CrossFitter as a generalist and basically plucking the aspects out of two very specialist sports, right? So elaborate on that a little bit and talk about what is the disconnect and how is there disconnect?
So I think with that said, you know, our big motto is that, you know, we're not specialists, and of, you know, as true as that is, I think one of the big things is that we're taking from two of the most specialized sports in the world in Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics. So again, to kind of say that we're generalists, and obviously we cover a huge variety of movements outside of the movements associated with gymnastics and Olympic weightlifting, but yet we still expect, you know, crazy results and huge progress without having the same approach as those specialist athletes. You know, again, you're talking about athletes who have trained for decades in their respective sports, and you don't really get anything much more specialized than Olympic weightlifting, maybe say other than rowing, where you're just repeating the same movement over and over and over again. Obviously, there are some other movements that you do that are auxiliary or to help, you know, again, reinforce those fundamentals. But again, your focus are basically two lifts. And so gymnastics is the same. It takes decades to be even, we'll say decent at the sport. But again, to kind of not work that in, or at least, you know, approach your fitness goals in regards to those movements without that same approach, I think you do a bit of disservice to your progress and your overall fitness. And that, again, you have to pay closer attention to how you go about progressing those movements and building your fitness.
Right. And would you say even the elite people out there, for the movements that they're approaching, the thing that is missing is strength, like overall?
Yeah, I think, you know, especially with your average everyday CrossFitter, you know, we have these benchmark movements that we want, you know, for example, like a muscle up, or maybe even something as simple as butterfly pull-ups or butterfly chest to bar and things like that. A lot of times we look to add dynamic movement to achieve our goals, and there's a lot of technique associated with that, and there's good and bad technique. There's lots of different techniques for every movement that we do, which is, you know, also something that I think we forget, in that there's no one way to do anything, and depending on what level of athlete that you are, you're able to incorporate different techniques depending on what the Metcon calls for. So just kind of going, this is the only way, that doesn't really survive in our world, especially if you're a competitive athlete. And again, everyone has different, you know, mobility situations, different strengths, different weaknesses. So you have to work within that realm of that athlete to achieve those goals and be smart about how you progress them. But I think the biggest problem that we see is that, again, people will look to improve, say, their kipping technique, or any sort of kipping movement before they look to improve their actual strength.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're still doing fitness, and it's all about building your strength and capacity. So to just go, well, I need to fix my technique, that may be very true, but if we're not addressing your fundamental strength in relation to the movement, well, then we're kind of bypassing parts of the process. And so again, you may get there. The problem is your continuous development will be hindered in that you'll see a little bit of fluctuation in regards to performance, because again, you haven't addressed the actual strength, you've addressed the technique. And again, just like with anything else that you do in Olympic weightlifting, obviously lifters work on their technique constantly, but they are also constantly squatting and performing auxiliary movements to improve those lifts, so that when they go to
support that.
Exactly. So when they go to address new PRs or new lifts, that you couple that new, we'll say newly developed technique with your added strength work, and hopefully you achieve that new PR, that new goal. So gymnastics is the same in that you do constantly focus on technique, but you also build the strength. Obviously, we don't have hours to spend every day in the gym, but those that do, you can't bypass that. These athletes worked for decades at doing all that every day to get to where they are, and it's unreasonable to think that if you're not going to devote at least a portion of that kind of effort to developing those movements, then you're going to have trouble somewhere down the road, or at least your progress will be a little stunted, and you'll have to take a few steps back to move a few steps forward.
Right.
I think the biggest thing is having patience in the process.
I think it's really funny, because the first thing is people will most likely gawk when you say, "Oh wait, you mean those elite athletes aren't strong enough, right?" They're like, "What are you talking about?" Because they're at the games and they're at every place else. But the thing that I think is so apparent when you said it to me is, like, you see people do accessory lifts towards Olympic lifting, even in the CrossFit community and stuff like that. You still see people